Well, hello, and welcome to the Milvet Podcast. Your podcast hosts are Brendan Aronson, Tim Shaw, and Beau Higgins. We are military veterans, entrepreneurs, and investors. But most importantly, we strive to empower military service members, veterans, and their families. We believe that all veterans deserve a career that fires them up, a career in which you can learn, you can earn, and you can build a world class network. On this podcast, we interview civilian and military veteran leaders who are incredible founders, writers, thinkers, and investors. My primary goal is to inspire you to achieve great things. Let's dive into today's episode. Well, hello, and welcome to another edition of the Milvet Podcast. I am your host, Beau Higgins, and I have the pleasure today to be joined by Josh Welle, who will share his story of transition and his journey to get where he is today. For those that may not be familiar with the Milvet provides an executive platform for veterans that are interested in getting into the private equity and venture capital world. If you are interested in learning more, please check out TheMilVet.org. You can check out previous podcasts. You can check out our newsletters. You can check out upcoming events. And you can see open jobs we have right now. And if you're a company interested in hiring veterans into your firm, we'd love to talk to you as well. But today, we're here with Josh to talk about what he's done in his transition story. And Josh, over to you, man. What are you doing these days?
Beau, great to be with you again. Thanks for having me, and thanks to Milvet. Currently, I'm the global strategy and operations leader for cybersecurity at Capgemini. And Capgemini is a global technology company with 350,000 people around the world. And I lead about 4,000 in cybersecurity. Really excited to talk about that work, but also talk about, the journey from, being a naval officer to being a corporate leader.
No, I love it. And I'm excited for you to share your story. Because again, there's every journey is a little bit different. And I know a lot of our listeners get a lot out of hearing other people's stories that they can relate to. Well, let's bring it back to the beginning then and talk about, what was that motivation or impetus for you to join the military? Obviously, you went to the academy. Was the military something you wanted to do since you were 5 years old? Was it a family thing? What was the journey for you to make that decision to start it off?
I can't say 5 years old, but I do think I was those Army Navy games had a big impact. When I was in high school, I was in the junior ROTC, and my grandfather was in World War II. But I wouldn't come from a classic military family. But I can tell you that I was inspired to join the junior ROTC in high school and on the Jersey Shore because it was about civics. It was about follow on. I was a Boy Scout person as well, and it was a place where I could learn about national security. I could learn about service to country. I was here, near Naval Weapons Station Earl. There's a lot of history of our country here in New Jersey, and I just felt getting closer to government and military through the junior ROTC was pretty amazing. And for those who've done junior ROTC in high school, wearing that itchy uniform every Thursday is not fun. It doesn't win you a lot of points, but it does win you a lot of brotherhood and sisterhood and friends. I ended up doing trick drill and trick drill team and competing on the drill team. I was leading the different competitions around the state of New Jersey in junior ROTC. And that was a real catalyst to go to the academy.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like obviously you had from a very early age a desire to give back and some patriotism and something that obviously being part of that team and found that obviously at the academy. Was that a place that you knew you wanted to go early on in your time in high school, or what was kind of the decision-making process to get to the academy itself?
Yeah, look, I think the academy for me was about love of country first, love of teams, and really what that meant to a life of service. Right. If you go there just to visit and go into Bancroft Hall, you see it in the different memorial. But I also feel it in the hallways, in the classrooms, in the sports field with your other brothers and sisters who are going to go off and do great things. And so I got to go down for an overnight. I was, one of the semi-recruits for soccer. I didn't have a big soccer career there, but I did get recruited to play soccer. And I said, man, this place is about people who, build teams, lead teams, drive change in the world. And I was inspired to be a part of that and grateful for an opportunity to get an appointment there. I ended up being a class president, years later. I was very active in the alumni board, cared deeply about helping great people come to the academy, but also talked to those midshipmen about, it's not about the academy, it's about what happens after, right? It's about being and leading sailors and Marines. And I think that maturation came over time, and I ended up doing 20 years in the military, about 14 active duty, and then 6 in the reserves.
That's awesome. Well, did you know that you wanted to be a SWO from day one, or was that something that you kind of figured out there? What was that? I mean, I know
Yeah.
you have a choice when you're there, but
Yeah.
what was the,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
You could pick Marine Corps. I'm just saying. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, I had my reservations, but one of the, George Economy, Prentice Nelson, and my other friends and classmates. I share that because those two friends graduated TBS, and one of the finest days in my career was when I went to TBS to watch my roommates graduate and become Marine officers. But for me, Marine Corps, aviation, SEALs. For me, I really loved surface warfare because you get a PhD in people. I think the culture of the submarine force is very unique. The Marine Corps, extremely unified and aligned. Our SEALs are a certain brand. But when you think about surface warfare, it is this like mosaic of personalities. And you have to learn to lead in different ways, whether in the pilot house or in the engine room or doing an IA to Afghanistan. Like you have to bring a real plethora of skills. And I think I'm excited to talk about careers because all of these pathways out of the academy can help you be a great leader. But surface warfare is unique, right? It's so get in the engine room with your sailors doing tough things, but also being quite executive when you're at OpNav or you're briefing the CNO on something very strategic. And I got to do all of those in my active duty time. So much love to SWO because you get to lead in different ways, in different environments. And I love the people I got to meet from all walks of life.
No, I love that, and I love that you said it's a PhD in leadership, and I talk about that all the time. That what people like Marine Corps, it is. I mean, what you get during your time in the military is a degree in leadership, and I often talk about how your leadership develops over time. As a young JO, there may be only a couple tools in your leadership toolbox. There's a hammer, and that's about it sometimes. But over time, because you're dealing with people from 18 to 45, all walks of life, civilians as you get more senior. I mean, you have to learn how to lead a vast array of people and add those tools to the toolbox, right? You want to be the whole Home
I love
Depot
that.
of tools in there because,
Yeah.
again, that JO leadership style is not necessarily going to work by the time you're in 05 or 06 or in the executive world, in the civilian world. But I
Yeah.
think that's what it's all about, right?
No, kudos to that comment, right? If I think about my lieutenant days or my ensign days, and then coming back as a department head on chief engineer on USS Harley Burke or XO of a minesweeper in Bahrain for nearly 2 years, your sense of connection to the mission and the purpose evolves, right? And therefore your leadership approach evolves. The level of responsibility and the burden of leadership evolves, right? And I feel that in the corporate world as well. And we'll talk about my time, in startups, my time in corporate America, my time at McKinsey. But that maturation is happening to me today, just literally in my new role at Capgemini, leading thousands of people, getting access to a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. I don't feel ready for that every day.
Yeah.
I'm learning, right? And so having that growth mindset similar to your time in uniform, I'm bringing that growth mindset to the corporate journey as well.
No, I love that, and I think it is. It's a never-ending journey. I mean, if you stop learning or stop wanting to learn or trying to keep adding new tools to the toolbox, I mean, you should get out of the way. It's always about improving yourself, getting more tools, and becoming and developing yourself and understanding your shortfalls. Being able to say, yeah, I need to add a new tool because I don't have it quite there. I need to read this book or do this thing or whatever it is. It's a constant evolution. And I love that,
Yeah.
and obviously you've been able to do that very well. I guess talking about your time in the Navy in particular, any highlights of that time? And I guess really, I like to just kind of pull out maybe what are the things that you took from your time in the Navy that set you up for success as you moved into the corporate world later on. Maybe kind of frame that in the lens of some of the highlights of your time, serving in the Navy.
There's a lot to unpack. I guess I'd share sort of like a peak moment for me was serving in a multinational coalition environment in Kandahar for about a year. But I think that the moment which is really compelling for me was that I took a risk with General Mick Nicholson when he was in 06. He went on to be a 4-star general and lead Afghanistan mission for many years. But I was operating in DC. I was teaching at the academy. I had wonderful mentors. And I was at this precipice of getting out, right? Struggling to say, maybe there's great things on the outside, And at that moment, the surge was going on, Afghanistan was coming to focus, and I really felt I had wonderful mentors and leaders. If the next generation is going to have good leaders, I need to sort of, stand the watch and continue this mission. So with that, I had an opportunity to go to Afghanistan. I think what I learned there is, I think building teams of teams and understanding that all of our equities aren't the same in a very complex, high conflict environment. So I was side by side the Canadians in Kandahar City. I was working with the British in Helmand. I was working with the Dutch in Aruzgan. I was working in Zabul province. And every time I went there, yes, we were the US military, but I was working under the NATO flag. And my sort of Jersey Naval Academy club soccer charging leadership style was not working.
Yeah.
It did not work in that environment, and you had to build bridges in a different way. And I think while those are some good attributes many of us have about like taking the hill, taking charge, we need that. That's powerful. But also I learned that element of humility, lifting others up, bringing more value to the conversation and taking value from the conversation was so important. And I really came to life working with incredible folks from all different types of uniforms, advancing the NATO mission.
No, I love that, and it's interesting. I had a conversation a few years ago with General Dunford, who was one of my mentors in the Marine Corps, and he talked about Afghanistan and just we had what we basically were paying for in Afghanistan was an insurance policy, right? Mm-hmm. We had our objectives. Afghans had their objectives. They were not necessarily aligned. Everyone in NATO has their own objectives of why they're there. And, if you're willing to pay that insurance policy, you can keep a temporal peace for a while. But at some point, if those things divide too much, you can't keep it all together. But it is interesting to understand. I think in NATO in particular, you see that because, again, I think the U.S. we get a bad reputation of being the guys that want to do it my way or the highway, and to be able to take everyone's equities into concern, to figure that out, to balance it, to appreciate what they bring to the table and leverage their gifts or their talents as well is hugely important. And we don't always do a good job of that, I think, as Americans sometimes. But again, certainly a leadership crucible to be there to figure all that out and pull the best from everyone to try to build some kind of a cohesive team, which is not easy in that environment. Not easy at all, for sure.
No,
That's great.
No. So, yeah, showing that empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of others, it pays dividends with your clients and customers. It pays dividends with your team of teams. It pays dividends later. And I think what I was grateful for with the Naval Academy and some other milestones was that I'm feeling so grateful in many ways, but also like it's all about lifting up those around you. And if you can be that catalyst and that engine, that's where exceptional leaders sort of start to shine.
Yeah. I mean, I make the analogy all the time, if, as a leader, your job is to remove the obstacles, right? If you can go out there and be the lineman and make the hole for the guy behind you to score the touchdown, that's what you're doing, right? I don't need the glory. I'm doing just fine. I'm gonna be good. But
powerful better. No more quarterbacks.
Yeah, exactly. I'm removing the obstacles, and I'm facilitating the guys that have the skill sets to be successful. And if you can do that, and the people you're working with buy into that, then you got something, right? Then they know they have you, that you have their best interests in mind, and they're going to be all in too by thinking that it's all about you, right? Wanting to score touchdowns yourself every time, So yeah,
spot on.
Love it. Well, so I mean, obviously you had a great run in the Navy. At some point, you decided you wanted to get out. What was that decision point like? I know you stayed in reserves, but what kind of was your thinking or just timing in life to make that call?
Look, after now 14 years active of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom, really SWO is just like every other trade has its own version of challenge. I felt like the organization didn't have the space for the entrepreneurship, the what I would sometimes call out of the box kind of not thinking, because I think there's tons of innovation within our services, but I wanted to be more bold and really live life on my own terms in some ways. Yeah. And I so value and admire those that go 20, 25, 30, 35 plus, because you realize after a while, the sacrifices of our families, the sacrifices of our servicemen and women, your career starts to be very malleable. you're going here, and you lose a lot of control, right? In the service of something that's so important to our country. So my classmates that are O6s and moving on and higher, they're standing the watch in a powerful way. For me, I felt like I was just getting a wall. Like, I want to push the envelope. I want to do different things. I want to bring in technology. It was 2013, 14, 15, iPhones, wearables, cloud. And that's why I sort of went on to start a company in government technology. I wanted to bring wearables and productivity software and SaaS software. And so the sort of revolution you're seeing in Palantir, Anduril, Shield AI, Havoc AI, Saronic, all these great companies, we were doing that 15 years ago. We started that with the Defense Entrepreneurs Forum with Micah Murphy. We started that with Ben Coleman, who's now a leader, a deputy secretary of the Navy. These guys in our generation, I think, in 2012, 2013, 2014, were pushing the envelope with the secretaries of defense and the leaders in the Pentagon to really bring more innovation to our soldiers and sailors. So I left the military then to be an entrepreneur, to be innovative, to bring technology to the front lines, because I've lived, living in the crucible, and raised venture capital. Got excited to build a company for ourselves and go on that journey that you guys are really enabling right now with Milvet.
And you make it sound like it was an easy thing to do to get into that space, but how did you do it? Did you have folks that were mentors of you that had gotten out that you partnered up with? Did you have an idea that you found someone to work with? I mean, usually it's a team together, but I'm just curious, what was your transition like? Yeah.
So look, if you want to go, I guess, fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with teammates. I had great teammates when we started our company. It was called CrossDeck. I had a co-founder who did private equity at Bain Capital. I had another colleague who was a real expert in finance and was able to bring some tremendous background in government technology as well. We did not have a technical co-founder. So lesson number one for our tech company founders, it's very powerful to have that technical co-founder. My role was much around product use cases. What was the need of the client and the customer on the front lines? Those guys, I think, did 4 or 5 years active duty and then went on to HBS and went on to Stanford or other great schools. So we had a nice team. We raised venture. We had a good business plan. We had great traction in the market. But what you'll hear in the Gov Technology story, right, is a bit around traction and moving on to the next round from C to A to B to C. And so I did that for about 3.5 years. We had a great run. We did, a good amount of revenue. But ultimately, I think we ran out of runway as founders in GovTech. And so you're going to think, we can talk about it now, and we can talk about it for those who want to catch up with me. But what does dual use technology mean today? Do you go commercial and then government? Do you start in government and then go commercial? What does that look like? So I did that journey for about 3.5 years. It was incredible. We had offices in San Diego, Norfolk, DC, presenting to the CIO of the Navy about what the future of technology should be. And then you're going to have to tell that story to investors, right? And the investor pool was different in 2013, 14, 15 than it is today around defense tech. Special shout out to Megan Metzger at Decode. She was a woman who had us at her sort of small office in 2014, who now is one of the largest defense incubators and venture arms in DC now, and she's an incredible leader as well. So happy to talk about that path, but also what came after.
Yeah, and I'm curious. I mean, were you using was the technology you wanted to develop based on what you saw active duty? I mean, basically, you had an idea, you saw a need to fill, and you kick that around.
Exactly. It was a lot around the pain points all of the co-founders felt. We were all surface warfare officers wanting to bring supply chain illumination, digital workflow to our sort of paper-based workflow, finding using predictive analytics on maintenance. I was a chief engineer on USS Harley Burke in the engine room, looking at lube oil, gas turbine, electrical distribution systems, saying, wait a second, how do we get off these paper logs, bring cloud and bring IoT to our ships? I mean, I was in Bahrain preparing for INSERV, the largest inspection, and I had sailors running around with their iPhones, taking pictures of maintenance things. Hey, sir, look at this broken valve. I said, wait a second. Why don't we have this digital ecosystem for our maintenance workers? And now you see companies like Thumbtack, or you see companies like Salesforce has a really good field solution. And we were pioneering that in 2013 and 14 on the front lines for our soldiers and sailors.
That's awesome. No, again, obviously, it's. I think there adds a little bit of called gravitas to it because you've been there, done that, and knew there was a problem, identified the problem, and they were able to raise the funds to address that problem and hope
Yeah.
they fix the problem, but put that in motion to find solutions for it. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, look, and we had to hack the bureaucracy, the SIBR phase 1, the SIBR phase 2, AFWorks, all NavWorks, all the different incubation engines, find the money, hire the team. I mean, it was both having the pain point and the product vision, and then quickly after that, it's the leadership that comes with getting the team, setting the mission, and moving it, rowing in the same direction, right?
And I'll ask at that point, at this portion of your career, which was kind of your first, toe in the water. I mean, you jumped right in. Not saying toe in the water. You can do it.
Totally.
I mean, what were things? And obviously, you've gone on to do more in the space and doing it now. But like, what were things you wish you would have known then that would have helped you? If there's people that want to get into space,
Yeah.
What were things that like, man, if I were to do it again, if I had to start from the beginning again, what are things that you would have done differently, maybe from the outset?
I think there's two things. I think one is a real positive thing is that you can do it. If you're a military veteran, you want to start your own tech company, let's use that as sort of the North Star, right? Tech companies have billion-dollar valuations. Non-technical companies, I would say, have like $100 million or $200 million valuations, right? It's kind of the economics of it. I think you have to do two things. One is build the right team. And I'd already hinted to this idea of a technical co-founder, right? Someone who's fresh out of computer science, out of MIT, maybe RIT, or any of our great public institutions. Someone who really can get into the code. And now with vibe coding and all these sort of speed coding with AI, maybe this barrier is broken. I do think technical acumen is very important in the age of cyber, in the age of AI. You need to have someone technically sound. At the same time, I think you need somebody who's really good with a customer and really good with product, right? And so you can live that like you just said. And I think we had that component. Maybe the third thing I say is where to play. Strategy is often about where to play. And I think that decision of GovTech, defense tech versus commercial is quite different, right? So the pain points are similar, but I would say playing in commercial in 2014 would have been, I think, the right move for us based on talent. Today, you'd have to ask yourself a similar question, right? What is the total addressable market? Where can I get traction? Where do I have a differentiation and sort of distinctiveness in my personal story? For us, it was our ability to access sort of that market on bases and in the halls of the Pentagon. For you, it might be, I have relationships in a certain ecosystem, whether it's financial services, healthcare, something else. So think about your SWOT, do a SWOT on yourself and your team, and follow that towards like the where to play question.
That's great advice. And again, obviously something that I think a lot of folks can learn from. And again, I think that just the whole decision matrix on, are you going civilian side? Are you going defense side? Because they're similar, but different challenges, right? I mean, they can be good, they can be bad, but they're definitely challenges for sure. Well, so the first, obviously your first foray into it went well, it ran its course. What did you decide you wanted to do next from there? How did you pivot from that?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. Look, I'd say I've had two post-military narratives, right? One is in entrepreneurships and startups, and the other is in corporate. So within that first bucket, it was starting a tech company in defense tech with great co-founders. The next was actually going into politics. And in 2018, I ran for Congress in New Jersey. Why Congress? Well, for me, I felt I came of an age. I was at an inflection point in my career, ending that startup and having a lot of white space. Like, where should I go? What should I do? And really thinking back to Plebe Summer, thinking back to going to some of those speakers we had at the Naval Academy when we had sort of the Jimmy Carters or the McCains and sort of some really impressive leaders. I remember them saying, you guys are going to have to lead this country in uniform or out of uniform. And you owe it to this country after this education, after this experience, to do more and give back. And so I felt it was at a moment in my life. I had a wonderful spouse at the time who was really excited about this opportunity as well. And I went back to my home district, really got to know what it meant to run for office. And I started my second venture. This was about a 2-year venture. I did not win the race for Congress. I won a really competitive primary, enabled a very digital 21st century campaign, got to know some of the top leaders in this political ecosystem. and learned a ton about everyday people. I mean, I knocked on 15,000 doors, had a staff of about 15 full-time folks and about 100 by extension throughout the state of New Jersey. And it was incredible testing the same things, right? What's your message? What's your product? What's your service? How do you give back to others? But also enabling the team. We had tons of software in our tech stack in this campaign. We had tons of branding, marketing, sales. I had to make phone calls. I think I made maybe 150 phone calls a day to try to raise capital. Hopefully, when you start a company, it's just call Insight Partners or Vista Partners or somebody, and they can write you big. But it was resilience and scrappy, and I really fell in love with American politics. Something that people don't believe in, maybe some right now. It's more fair than people think. Anybody can get into it who really love their country. Maybe mine was slightly different, right? Because financially, my wife supported me for nearly 2 years. I had a little bit of reserve income, but maybe that was the differentiator. But I would say that running for office really made me appreciate our country more, understand how much democracy matters, and how all of us have a key role in being engaged in this civic discourse.
I love that. And I love, I mean, again, I tie it back to your early days of being in the Boy Scouts and JROTC, always wanting to do something with the community and giving back and having that patriotism. And I think nothing reflects that more than willingness to put yourself out there running for office. It's a scary thing. I mean, you are like a founder. I mean, you're jumping in with both feet, and that, in this case, you're by yourself in a lot of ways. Like having a team. I mean, you have a team, but you're the face of it all, And I thought you made some great parallels between what it's like to run a startup and to run for campaigns. I mean, calling people. I mean, obviously, trying to raise capital, you're getting a lot of no's, right? You're talking to a lot of people, and you're refining your talking points and what you are all about, and getting that message clearly out there. I mean, a lot of similarities, I think, in the startup world and putting yourself out there for running for Congress is kind of interesting. I thought it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Thanks.
And I mean, and again, and good on you for doing that. 'Cause again, it takes a lot. I know these day and age. I mean, I think a lot of people are afraid to go in there because of it looks a little ugly from the outside. But obviously, you took a lot of the positives from it, which is great. And I'm sure there are way more positives than the negatives out there than you see in the press every day. But
that's exactly. Don't believe everything you read or hear.
Definitely not. Well, and I'm sure that obviously, I mean, that's a pretty significant pivot, but it opened other doors for you in some ways too. I mean, being in that space, I talk to people all the time. I mean, your network is your net worth, right?
You're not lying.
You just made a whole different network that you established in those 2 years running for office, that now you could, I say merge them together, but just expanded your network, I mean, exponentially by doing that.
No, it's a great point. Yeah. So much to get out of your stateroom and go walk around, right? I was doing, 3 events a day for about 7 months with top leaders in New Jersey, New York, et cetera. And those people have great access and they've been leading different companies. So I tapped into that network to give me an opportunity to go to McKinsey. And I think to that point, I almost think of McKinsey for me, I did about 5 years there, was a place for me to tie all this together. Mm-hmm. McKinsey is a wonderful place, as is many of these other sort of top management consulting firms, because you learn to solve problems across disciplines, across industries. And I thought at that point, I was well prepared to bring in public sector, national security, incredible experiences in the Navy, plus tech entrepreneurship, which I learned firsthand and sort of at the coalface. And the political stuff, for me was just really about thinking at the highest strategic level, right? Really, what does the three-dimensional chessboard look like? Really talking to boardroom executives. You want to talk about like what politics exposed me to? Really, I was calling the CEO of the top, trying to talk to the CEO, CXO of the top 1,000 companies in this country. And so McKinsey put you in that same seat as well. McKinsey also was a place where cyber came to life for me, right? Cybersecurity, national security is a wonderful Venn diagram there that many people on this call should be excited about. You have a great national security foundation. Cybersecurity is huge right now as we grow in the AI ecosystem. That's a really nice place for so many people who want to get into technology can go. That's where I found a home at McKinsey. McKinsey's massive, 40,000 people. But the cyber practice at McKinsey had tons of vets, had tons of great people, mentors who probably from the DC area. And that was a place I could drive impact for my clients, right? Some of the skills, experiences I had in the military were transferable. They were looking at new age companies, whether it's, and I got to know Insight and Vista and ForgePoint and great companies investing in new age technology. So anyway, I was able to bring relevance and value to my clients in cyber within McKinsey.
That's great. I think you made a good point too. I don't know if people appreciate how many veterans are at McKinsey. I mean, there's a lot of them out there. They're pretty good McKinsey network of veterans that spend some time there and learn a lot. Again, and you're bringing obviously a lot back to them but they're also giving back to you because they have an amazing network and resources as well. So yeah, it goes both ways.
Yeah. Sure. They do a great skill bridge program. Scott Blackburn, Tucker Bailey, Matt Waters. Shout out to all three of those guys and others who were incredible, coaches, mentors, friends along the way. And they are out there right now on LinkedIn. Charlie Lewis, I want to give a shout out to him as well for McKinsey. Reach out to these folks if you're passionate about management consulting. But then also, these are guys who just care about veterans in general. I mean, I could go to Scott Blackburn now and he would think of other great opportunities for vets. So vets are taking care of vets throughout. And special shout out to Google as well. I for years when I was at McKinsey, every summer I would do their vets, 1 day sprint or 2 or 3 day sprints where they, upskill people. And the partnership with what Google does, and another call out to Josh Marcuse, who's a wonderful leader at Google, who really cares about people who've worn the uniform and want to get into technology.
I love that. No, that's great. And it's great to know that they have that network there that wants to bring in veterans and is open to that. And again, that will answer a phone call and send the elevator back down to bring folks up. I think that's, we all had mentors that helped us get to where we are, and to be willing to take the time to help other folks, get in there and learn a little bit and have a cup of coffee with them and share their experiences is great. And love that people are, willing to do that to a place that may seem intimidating to some people, but knowing there are folks that are willing to do that, because it does sound McKinsey has this ooh, I don't know, there's something about it. Could be a little scary, I think,
but change is scary. And we can talk more about that. But whether you do 5, 10, 15, or 20, like my thinking is that everybody who served in uniform has so much value to bring to the private sector. We just got to get you in the right place to untap it.
And so as you were winding up your time at McKinsey, did you have your next idea in mind from being in that space? I mean, you were obviously involved in a lot of cool things there and some cool projects, I'm sure. Did something percolate up to say, all right, now I have a next idea. I'm going back in,
It's funny. I think McKinsey is the best. It's a place where you can grow and have spent 30 years for sure.
Yep.
I did speak to different, I ended up at Capgemini because I was lucky to be kind of like in the recruiting funnel for a really interesting position that made sense for me in that moment. And I think a lot of McKinsey people or people management consulting, every year, every 2 years, they're reevaluating where they are in their journey and what's right for their family. And we should all do that. For me, I knew I was coming to a place where I wanted to move from advisory to operator. Mm-hmm. And advisory versus operator is so different, right? Advisory means strategy, service design, systems integration. But in the end of the day, you're recommending change to someone else who goes and is accountable for that change. It's a different level of accountability. Concepts, responsibility, accountability, things that we grew up with, they're just different when you're an advisory consultant. Pivot to, what did you do this quarter? What did you accomplish this year? What are your KPIs? Your bonus is attached to this outcome. You become an operator. It's very different. Being able to hire, let people go, change people's lives, move them around this company. That's only in the operator domain, right? That really comes to life as an operator, whether you're leading 50 people or 5,000. Operator and advisory are different. So I would encourage people to go to these McKinsey, Bain, BCG, whatever, learn from some of the best in the world. But when you're ready, for those who have an operator instinct, go be an operator. A mentor of mine in cyber, founder of $1 billion cyber company, he had a 20-minute conversation with me, coffee mentorship. I said, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing? Go operate. Go lead something. You went to the Naval Academy. You played soccer. You did ROTC. You did this. You ran for Congress. What are you doing? Go lead something. So since that conversation, I started myself, tried to go find, where can I take my backpack of skills and toolkits and go drive impact and go lead and be an operator. And so I found that at Capgemini, I'm so inspired by the work I do today, but would not be possible without McKinsey, without the run for Congress, without the startup, without the time in Bahrain and Afghanistan. Like all of that comes together as a leader today.
No, I love that. And again, I think it's a journey, right? I mean, every step along the way, and I say this all the time, even in jobs that may not be the most glamorous, sometimes you get a staff job with the Pentagon or whatever. It may seem like it's drudgery, but you can take something from every job you're in, right? You can and take good and bad, like things I'm not going to do anything like that, but I'm going to learn from that leader. I'm going to learn this, and every step along the way, it's a learning journey to help you open the next door for yourself and to keep on that learning journey continually. And it's great. I love the way you phrase that. Again, every step for you was one more, just again, another tool in the toolkit to set you up for success for where you are now. So again, I guess we'll talk about that. And then what are you doing now? And again, how are all those skills, kind of coalescing into what making you successful now? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for the opportunity I have. So I'm doing, I would say, leading cybersecurity at Capgemini with a small team of sort of executives. And I'm responsible for most of the strategy and operations, or product development and operations. So what do we bring to market? Whether it's, there's a huge opportunity with cybersecurity, from network security to mobile security to infrastructure security to zero trust to all kinds of things. And so what I try to do is say, wait a second, we have a 4,000 person, depending how you slice it, right? 6,000 cyber professionals at Capgemini. How do we go to market in a unified way? How do we bring the right markets to the right size company, whether it's enterprise or mid-market, and make sure we're meeting those clients where they are? We can't do it without great partners. So hyperscalers, I have great relationships in this role with Google, Microsoft, AWS. We have joint initiatives. So that's sort of corporate development, joint strategy. We also work with the top cyber vendors in the world. Very excited to work with like Zscaler, CrowdStrike, Palo Alto Networks. These are phenomenal companies that we have relationships with. And then we deal with the startups. So folks that, I remember going to startup conferences with in San Francisco or Techstars in New York. Those same founders come to me every day and say, hey, Josh, can we partner with Capgemini and test out this technology for some of your clients? So there's a really interesting connectivity, shared experience that I can bring to my day-to-day work back from 2014. So I grow the business, I build the business, I work with our engineers and our delivery teams to do this from Japan to Australia. Every day, it's a global role. So you wake up kind of early and have a conversation with Europe. And then somehow you're back on the phone 10 or 11 o'clock at night with Australia or Japan and India. But I really love my colleagues. They're so impressive, and they're so, I guess, talented in things that I continue to learn about, right? Hands-on keyboard, understanding the nuances of cloud, understanding the nuances of security operations. And my role is to get the best out of those folks, get them all rowing in the same direction, bring a unified message to the market, and grow our market share around the world.
It's fascinating. I love to hear just all the collaboration that you're working with, from the smallest to the biggest. I mean, it's across the board, which is pretty sweet. And a question I have for you, for folks who may be watching, you talk about, you're obviously in the cyber industry, and I think people throw around cyber AI. Those are the buzzwords of today, right? Those industries are the ones that are growing exponentially. But if you're a veteran that's getting out now and maybe a SWO, right? You weren't a cyber guy by any means in the Navy. Oh, you're probably exposed to it in some way, maybe more than others. But if you want to get into that tech kind of space and you are a veteran today, any recommendations or thoughts on how to do that, or what is a path to get into a place? Maybe you're a combat arms guy, right? I'm an infantryman, I'm an artilleryman, I'm even a pilot, whatever. I'm sure it touches your lives, but any thoughts on folks that really want to get into the space and how to become fluent in the language? You get your MBA and you learn fluency in business, but how do you get fluent in the cyber lingo?
Yeah. So first off, reach out to me personally if you think there's a connection and you think I can help you get into anywhere in tech. I would love to support personally. But for broad advice, right? The coolest thing I think about what you alluded to this, that there is a veteran community at all these top companies you see on the NASDAQ, right? Whether it's Facebook or Google or some of these maybe tech companies you're not so as familiar with. one, get to know that network, right? Don't be afraid to reach out to those people at the companies that you're inspired by, right? Brandon Stang from Shield AI, kudos to them. They just launched the coolest drone, the XBAT, this week. Brandon and I went to school together at the Harvard Kennedy School, and he was at HBS. I'd be happy to connect someone with him. He'd be happy to talk to you. He cares deeply about Vet's success, but you're just passionate about Anduril or Palantir, whatever. So follow your passion first. That's going to take you to a community. The coolest thing about cyber and tech is that these folks they see the passion and they want to lift you up. So with that, you'd start taking some courses in Microsoft or AWS, maybe just to get familiar. Maybe you're going to learn about Salesforce because Salesforce is awesome. Complement your passion with a little bit of credentialing goes a long way in the eyes of the tech community. So I'm a vet from, Penn State University. I did ROTC, Marine Corps, but I just took a course on cloud computing or AI security. Bring that to the conversation when you go talk to your vet alum. That changes their perception of you because you're bringing your passion and your commitment to up-leveling your skills and capabilities, right? And we talked about earlier in the call, continuous learning, growth, have that growth mindset. You can't leave the military after 15 and think you have it figured out. No, you're just getting started. So if you bring that and you show that resilience, people are going to want to help you and bring you into great opportunities. And then all those instincts that got you through TBS or OCS or got you through long deployments is going to really shine.
No, that is great advice. And again, I think for a lot of veterans, there's a couple challenges they have, especially guys getting out, today. One is I've seen a reluctance many times for veterans to ask for help. I think we get conditioned many times in the military, if you ask for help, it's a sign of weakness, right? I can figure it out myself. And you learn in the military, like you got a guy at the armory and you got a guy over here, you got a guy, your guy. And all of a sudden you leave the walls of the military and like, I don't got a guy anymore. And somehow I think this idea of networking has a negative connotation to it. And people feel like, it's networking is somehow, I don't know, just has a negative connotation to it, which is, I think, untrue. But I've seen that from folks that just feel reluctant to do it. But I appreciate you just extolling the fact of, hey, reach out to people like that. There are people at every company, to your point, that are more than happy to have a cup of coffee with you. I encourage folks, hey, don't reach out to folks asking for a job. Asking about, hey, what's the culture like at the company you're at? How did you get there? What makes it tick? Those kind of questions. People love to share their experience of that. And again, I think they shouldn't be reluctant, but I think they are, and they need that nudge sometimes to say, hey, it's okay. I mean, all of us are where we are today because other people helped us out and sent the elevator back down. And I know you're doing it, and I'm certainly trying to do it every day to send it back down and bring people up. But I think somehow there can be a reluctance for folks to feel like I don't want to bother them, or it's untoward in some way, shape, or form. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, look, it makes sense, right? If you showed up and they gave you the uniform, they cut your hair, they gave you orders, you kind of get this this mindset that things are going to be laid out for you. Mm-hmm. Something's going to happen next that's going to tell me where to go, and that's not what the real world's going to. That's not that your wake up call, right? So in that moment, I think go back to the other experiences you had, which is like, okay, I was in that foxhole, I was in that cockpit, I was in that on that ship on the bridge wing, and you have a community of communities to reach out there. There's a team of teams ready to help. And if you think of it of like, I'm just leveraging my team and being a teammate and all these teammates, then you're not networking, you're not asking for help, you're just tapping into your team of teams out there, right? What General McChrystal would say. So look, what I would complement that with, and there's some wonderful people who talk about this in the veteran communities, come to those conversations with passion, with a willingness to learn about, and also maybe help, right? I noticed, Beau, that you do a lot with the Travis Manning Foundation. I haven't done a lot with them since 2009 or 10, but I really want to do more. Is there anything I can help you with, Beau, in the next 2 or 3 years with Colonel Mannion, with Ryan? Beau's like, wait a second. Josh wants, I'm finding ways to help Beau because I'm excited for us to collaborate together. And that's a way you can approach every networking conversation. You went on LinkedIn, you say what they've been doing. Hey, I saw you're interested in this. Is there any way I can help with that? No, I don't need it right now, but maybe in the future. It changes the relationship in those, LinkedIn outreach calls.
Now that is great advice, and I think you're spot on with that. To find the common connection, find something where it can facilitate both ways, and not make it a one-way ask. Make it more of
Yeah.
a two-way street there, and that is certainly opens the door. And people, it kind of puts them at ease. Like, okay, he's not looking for me to give him something; he wants some advice, and maybe can help me out too. I think that's sage advice. For a more kind of specific question about Capgemini, I mean, why do you think veterans in general are successful there? I mean, obviously, what's the percentage of veterans you have in the company? Do you know? Or I mean, just curious.
Yeah, we're very veteran friendly. We do, and we're global. So Josh Welle, the commander from the Navy, is hanging out with someone from the British military or the Navy, the French military. So a lot of my friends are actually former NATO guys. I mean, this is a country that operates in 52 different countries around the world. Now 400,000 people. We have a ton of vets. We're pretty organized around the veteran structure, but we definitely do our best to partner and recruit and make sure they have a home here at Capgemini. What I think is interesting and distinctive about veterans in corporate is you're going to find in corporate America that there are long hours. But often some people time box it Monday to Friday. If you could go a little bit more, bring that military resilience. Come in on a Saturday, being willing to show up a Sunday, go the extra mile, say, oh, don't worry about it. I'll show up early for this. You start to differentiate yourself pretty quickly. And people love it. They love your commitment to mission. So don't lose that, right? Because that's one of your superpowers. Like being able to be resilient, to go above and beyond, to take tough orders. I mean, friends who have been out there 6, 7, 8 month deployments, and then they say, you got 2 more months. Like you guys survive that, you can work on Saturday. And so bring that commitment to the mission, and you're going to be distinctive just by being that kind of teammate.
No, it's great advice too. And it's funny. I had a conversation with a guy that started. He was at Goldman, I think, and he got there, and he very much felt like imposter syndrome. Like these guys are smarter than me. Why am I even here? And he's like, you know what I did? I did Windows, meaning like he took the lunch order and he did the thing. He did all the stuff that like nobody else wanted. Like, I didn't want to do, but he like all the things that are like not even the job per se, but because he took the lunch orders, the guy that was the boss, like got to know him and he would talk to him one-on-one, and he had these, just being willing to do those things that are what good leaders would do, taking care of their people, so to speak. Can go a long way. You don't have to be the smartest guy. You don't have to be the technology expert, but those intangibles of willingness to do things that aren't in your job description, right? I mean, that's not my job. Never say that's not my job. Make it your job. Figure it out. Make yourself invaluable in doing things that nobody else wants to do. And it sounds simple, but it works. I mean, it's something that other people don't think about. I think that's what veterans bring to the table a lot of times.
Right. I on to that. I've watched you over your career the last 10 years since Amazon and some other things. You have a massive following. Your positive energy to every situation is transformative. Yeah. One of the best leaders I worked with in the Navy, Ted Pledger, phenomenal surface warfare officer. He would, really study sort of the philosophy of leadership, and John Wooden and other things like this. And we'd always talk about positive attitudes. A positive attitude is contagious. It lifts everybody up, gets the best out of your team. I mean, that's what that guy was doing at Goldman, right? He would say a can-do spirit, a positive attitude, bringing your passion every day, when other people, are going to be lifted up by that. So, Beau, I think you do that for everything you touch. So thank you. And I hope everybody does that as a veteran when they transition.
No, I appreciate that, Josh. Thank you for that. And I'd love to talk a little more. I mean, I loved your journey to where you are now, but talk about some of the things you're doing in the veteran space. You're obviously very involved in some other support. I'm a TMF guy, but I'd love for you to share some of the things you're doing out there and how other people may want to be able to get engaged in some of your passion projects.
Yeah, so it's interesting. My core areas right now are a lot of one-on-one helping for veterans running for Congress. And I help people who want to get into politics go, pass on those lessons. And sometimes that's hours of coaching and mentoring on nights and weekends. I very much help people one-on-one, think about McKinsey and other Bain, BCG, Deloitte top consultancies, help them make that transition. So I always sort of coach on that, review resumes, help them on mock interviews, things like that. And then then lastly, sort of a one-on-one point of view, I do a lot with aspiring cadets to West Point and midshipmen to the Naval Academy, because I care deeply about those schools. Ironically, I've been on a sort of pause for some of these great veteran causes in the spirit of helping out what I would call sort of diverse communities from non-traditional schools get into tech. So, for instance, I'm an advisor on the business program and MBA program at Rutgers University. Some of the smartest people I've ever gotten to know, college and grad school, but they're not always getting recruited from the top companies, because they're usually going to some of our top 5 universities. Rutgers is phenomenal. Our top state schools are phenomenal. All these other schools are incredible. And so I try to be a bridge for Rutgers into corporate America. I'm trying to really use this moment in corporate to sort of, like you said, drive impact in new spaces, knowing that the veteran community was my foundation. I love GovTech. I love helping transitioning vets, but I'm trying to also bring that love to people in different spaces, right? And be a bridge and role model for those communities who want to sort of be successful as well. So that's kind of where I am, showing a lot of love to New Jersey, showing a lot of love to my wife and 2 kids when I have free time. But really, that's what I'm up to today as I think about giving back.
Man, that's awesome. And I know probably keeping the work-life balance can be a challenge sometimes, but that is important, and I talk about that all the time too.
Exactly.
Important, with 5 kids, although they're mostly out and about these days in school, but trying to find that balance between, the mental and work piece of it from your physical fitness piece of it and your spiritual piece of it, which is super important to me too, and trying to keep that all in balance. Because you see, when it gets out of whack, everything kind of can spin a little crazy for sure. That's good stuff.
No, absolutely. No, I just feel a lot of gratitude and, likely going to Army Navy this year. Excited about I think we're undefeated headed into some Notre Dame game in a week or two. So we'll see how the Navy team does. But so, I mean, honestly, what Milvet is doing, where my journey has gone, is so, grounded in service to country, teamwork, the lessons of Bancroft and the lessons we learned on the front lines, whether it was a pilot house or in a platoon or underwater in a submarine or a squadron. Those are all applicable to corporate and I think and to startups, where Milvet really focuses. I think you guys have such a great foundation to be successful.
Well, Josh Welle, it has been a pleasure to be here today with you. I really thank you for your insights. I mean, I think so much of what you said will relate to our audience. Everybody's journey is a little bit different. One door closes, another door opens, and it's a continuous learning journey. And you've shared some great insights, I think, for our audience. So thank you for the time today. Go Navy, beat Army. Hope you're out the Travis Manion Foundation tailgate at the Army Navy game, and look forward to seeing you and hoping raising a beer one of these days soon, man. Appreciate the time.
All right. See you around. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. For more content, follow us on Instagram @TheMilitaryVet or on LinkedIn. Join us at an upcoming event or learn more on our website, TheMilVet.org. Feel free to email us directly at leadership@themilvet.org. Thank you so much and take care.